You don't want to hear from how many people I hear that Kubernetes is hard, that they don't understand it, they are scared of it. People who have years of the experience, they're scared of touching Kubernetes.
Well, if you ask David Heinemeier Hansson of Ruby on Rails fame, he will tell you, yes, you can save 7 million across 5 years if you drop the cloud. But I think his example is an outlier.
Good IT advice should be like a good pair of pants. It should fit and match properly because, look at us, 3 people, all running and helping plenty of customers. But we all have different ideas. We have different experiences, different strategies, different go-to methods. When I ask you actually for some input and then I'm actually deciding on something completely different, but that's what I call the Red Hot Chili Peppers method. It's actually stolen from them. And basically when they were making music, they were coming to the practice and they were, everybody was throwing something on the table. And even if it was something completely wrong, it was actually giving a new inspiration in the brain. And that's exactly the exact opposite of what we have with AI these days, which basically is working just on some input which is already there. But what we would like to talk about today, should you really use the cloud or not? And I think the answer is very simple. It depends. And I would like to start with a big bomb. Can you actually save millions by jumping the cloud and doing something completely different?
Well, if you ask David Heinemeier Hansson of Ruby on Rails fame, he will tell you, yes, you can save 7 million across 5 years if you drop the cloud. But I think his example is an outlier, and also following this approach blindly will cost you more than 7 million in the long run.
It depends.
It depends. But Paulina, I think because you're probably used to seeing huge cloud bills, it can get very quickly very expensive. Is it the only problem?
It can get very quickly very expensive, but also if you don't have skill set to move out of cloud, your bill can move out of cloud to the people because you need more skilled people to be able to run off cloud very often. What very often CTOs are not aware of. But yeah, cloud can escalate. You move too much data, you turn on logs. Some people are not aware, and developers want everything, or management. Hey, can we log it? Can we get more performance? Can we get better instance? Can we get more auto-scaling without really looking into cost?
It is a candy shop, and each piece of candy costs you a little bit more. So that's obvious. But on the other hand, it comes also with something which I love about the cloud, despite every now and then being super expensive, is the fact that you have all the resources available and they are just like candy. You just pick them up from the shelf. And that's what you said. Bo, you said both about the DHH that you need the skill set, because I'm old enough to remember the days when I was also running bare metal servers. It means often going in the middle of the night and trying to maintain something. I don't know if any one of you remembers those times.
Yeah. Some of us are all equally old as you.
Oh, yes.
And we remember setting up servers, so either in the basements or in the rack when we were lucky, and then running and kicking the reset button in the pre-KVM era. Yes, definitely. But at the same time, cloud, as you said, it's a candy shop. You can cherry pick what you want. And nowadays, if you look outside of the established patterns of AWS and Google Cloud Platform, you can find cloud that's not just overpriced instances. You can have a piece of bare metal. You can have a managed server in the rack. You can have a flexible instances. There is so much to choose from. There is really no reason why not to look for the cloud offering at this point in time.
Paulina, I'm actually curious because you work a lot with customers directly in the cloud because you're a DevOps expert. Do you have any customers that actually still have some bare metal hidden somewhere?
I have. Sometimes it's the requirement by the legal or by the industry they are within, or to being able, or you have, for example, development in cloud, and when you have production in self-hosted cloud or in bare metal, because there's requirement connected to the data for various reasons. Legal, it can be country, it can be industry. It depends from customer to customer. So yeah, you have very often hybrid setups as well, which are even more complicated to connect versus if you run everything under the same environment.
So wrapping up, just if you ask me, can you save 7 millions or can you save millions by jumping the cloud? I would say it depends, highly depends. It's like one in a few millions.
I'm guessing you can save, but the question is, where will you spend the 7 million from now on? Because it's not a magic bullet, right? It doesn't suddenly going on cloud or removing yourself from the cloud. It doesn't really change anything. Even serverless has server behind it. At some point it's still infrastructure. So where the money goes, whether you offload your savings onto a internal DevOps team to maintain things, or you offload it to the managed cloud and you pay the cloud provider for managing your infrastructure. So I'm not going to say it's zero-sum game, because it's not. But is the difference really that big? Paulina, have you seen anything in your time where these things apply?
So to wrap it up, can you really save millions by jumping the cloud? I'm talking like totally serious. If you look on your customers, on some of the bigger customers that we all have been working with, can you really save so much money? And I'm taking into account all the costs. I'm talking about training the people, getting new people to actually take care of the machines and servers, or actually paying remote hands for maintaining those machines, because in the cloud you just click on a button, the whole thing is being restarted, provisioned, whatever. Here you actually have hardware machines you lease usually, because it doesn't make sense to own it. Can you really save it? I think it's going to be very hard, and it's one in a few millions that you actually have the opportunity to save. What do you think?
I think you can. I heard about the case also in Denmark about quite a big company who move out of the cloud back to bare metal, and they save at least 50% on the cost. But they have skilled people, they know what they're doing, and I think that's the combination which required skill set and some strategy which is coming with it. Because if you just jump from one to another, usually people don't do it right.
Yes, so simply, if you know what you're doing, of course it's going to work, yes? And if you have the money, if you have the scale. Jarek, I'm very interested in your approach.
I think that although it's not zero-sum game, the difference in the long term is going to be it's not going to be such a big difference. Because at the end of the day, whether it's cloud, whether it's bare metal on rack, it's a server someone has to maintain. Someone has to take care of it, maintain security, maintain backups, data retention, electricity availability. All those things still apply. So serverless still has servers. Your cloud is a bunch of boxes, someone else's rack. So it's either your people doing it or someone else people doing it. The bill at the end of the day comes through the post, and you will have to pay it. Now, it might look different. The optics might be different because, as Paulina said, you might already have skilled people, and the move to bare metal might not be so brutal, and it might feel like you are just landing on a nice cushy pillow. But not everyone's in the situation. And just to bang on the same example, DHH has problems because his people were not able to move to Kubernetes in self-hosted, so they ended up writing their own release automation called Camel. Who has the time and resources to do that when you can?
They also started doing their own Linux distribution, yes? That's something I was reading just recently, yes. But I think I have a good metaphor for this. So basically, correct me if I'm wrong, cloud is the convenience shop. You can buy ready-made sandwiches, pizzas, whatever you want. It's the restaurant. So basically, jumping the cloud means that you actually go to the kitchen. You start preparing the meals. You start cooking.
I prefer
of course, you can save.
Yeah,
I prefer candy shop analogy because, and the reason why is because, unlike groceries, candies are optional. You can build everything yourself, right? So the cloud is usually the thing you pay extra for just to get this kick of I want to have new server with one click. That's your sugar rush, right?
Yeah, but I wouldn't fully agree because you still need skill set for cloud, what people very often underestimate. Because sure, the entry level its bar is lower. You can go click, do the click ops, get the server, get the log group or whatever, and so on. But to being able to maintain it efficiently, especially on more complex projects, it's required skills and updating knowledge on similar way when you run on the bare metal. So I don't find it that different if you start going into scale. For the simplified, I think, yes, it's much easier to being able to start. The entry point is lower and easier.
I think you're absolutely right. And there is like with going bare metal, that even in cloud, you have multiple layers of price versus convenience ratio. You can go with fully managed services and something like serverless. Then you absolutely have no tangible, then there is no tangible notion of the physical hardware. And then you can probably surf and cruise for quite a bit of time without having a DevOps knowledge. Because as you said, you just click through certain things. But those services come with the highest price tag possible. Then you go a level lower. Things are a bit cheaper, but then you have to start writing your own Kubernetes files and you're writing your operators to automate certain things. And then you go even lower, where you just provision simple EC2 boxes and other instances of that sort, which are, again, cheaper than managed services and so on. So even in the cloud, there is a level of convenience versus price.
Yeah, but you still need network security groups, security logs, and so on. So it doesn't go away. It doesn't matter if you do serverless or if you do EC2.
It's put on different level of abstraction, right?
Yeah,
so
of
as
course.
you said, you can click through it rather than necessarily know exactly what you need to do, right?
What, in your opinion, because I just heard serverless, I think serverless is brilliant because it allows you to have resources that you don't really have and use them whenever it's convenient for you, but it also comes with a huge price. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. And I think serverless is brilliant if self-hosted, specifically for the reason you probably are over-provisioned today, probably are over-provisioned, and serverless in the self-hosted option will allow you to utilize those resources which you already pay for without the extortionate price tag from the cloud provider.
Do you remember this story about this application that went viral during COVID, I think? And those guys within 2 days...
for the registration of the...
Yeah, something like that. Within 2 days, they managed to gather $300,000. Probably it's a completely wrong number, but it was like a ridiculous amount of money.
Yep.
I think that's the biggest trouble with serverless. I mean, that's the thing. It's like with the candy shop. You take too much candy, of course.
You have
it's a
bellyache.
trap.
Yeah, but with over-provisioning also, it's a problem, I think, in the 90 or 80% of the organizations. Because, we want efficiency, we want availability, we want reliability. But especially if you start looking from more sustainable point of view into, how to handle instances and so on, that's the first one you start looking. Okay, what is over-provisioned? What is not used? Which resources we keep too much up? Because we usually keep too many instances up and we don't use it. Or you keep it, 24/7 and you have only customers in one country where people look at it, I don't know, in the weekend primarily, or during the weekdays in the evenings. So,
and ironically, that could be pointed out as a higher cost of cloud, whereas I think it's the opposite. Because imagine buying 10 servers in your rack and keeping them in the basement,
That's impossible.
and not being able to downscale. Whereas if you're on cloud, you go and flip the switch, and boom, instance disappears and the build goes down. Well, obviously, unless you have reserved instances. But in a way, the extra price tag of cloud, because the servers are more expensive, comes with the benefit that you can always downscale your expenses in a matter of minutes, not months.
Yet that the experience says that you are usually upscaling, but that also means usually that the business is going well, yes? That the company is actually expanding.
You are facing predatory and evil practices of cloud providers, AWS, that deliberately make pricing and management console so obscure that you cannot really find those instances that you have lying around for 2 years and never disabled.
But
Paulina, do you understand the cloud pricing?
each cloud provider has
That's
a
right. Exactly.
different cloud pricing. Azure is one, AWS, GCP. Then you have local European clouds, and everyone is pricing in a different way.
But each one has a pricing which is completely. The purpose is to make your brain go bananas. It's impossible to get heads and tails of it.
And also on top of it, especially in the bigger organization, when you have, not one or two environments, you have sometimes 100 environments. You need to, infrastructure as a code, drift detection. You need people who are actually looking into the cost all the time on everyday basis to being able to monitor, hey, did some team turn it on the particular environment? Which environment are we using? What are we using? Do we have over-provisioned databases, over-provisioned instances, resources? I've seen the big organization, you have one or two or whole team sometimes of the people who are only dedicated to looking into cost of the cloud.
Yeah, there are businesses that their sole offering is to automate and extract reports about how much you spend on AWS, because the pricing and account management on AWS is bananas, like Banana Republic bananas, not yellow bananas. It's insane. I have a pretty decent experience with OVH. Yes, they are not the best, and they might have their own quirks here and there with pricing, but at least I so far had decent experience with them. It's an outlier, as you said. Most of them have very confusing pricing. Most have some kind of hidden fees here or there, or you pay for one thing and only second you're always being upsell something else if you want to make full use of the service you just purchased. It's a minefield. Someone has to skillfully operate.
But when I look at our discussion now, I have this feeling that see how many complex words have kind of like when I analyze our discussion right now, I can see a lot of complex words come to the surface. And the more we talk about jumping the cloud, the more hardcore it gets in a way. But then we come back to the cloud and we still figure out that it's hardcore. The point is, it is difficult. Both are difficult, but if you decide to jump the cloud, I think it's even harder because you really have to have even more discipline to keep everything together, because you're no longer just responsible for managing of the software paradigm. You no longer have infrastructure as a code. You now have physical machines. Do you agree with me or not? Because I think it's the discipline graph goes completely skyrockets.
So saying that cloud is harder or that bare metal is harder?
I'm saying that both are hard, but if you decide to run bare metal, it's going to be even harder because you have also the hardware things. Yes. Now you don't care if the hypervisor below has a problem with the hard drive, has a broken CPU, the RAM doesn't check out. You don't care. When you have your own machines, that suddenly becomes a problem. Yes. Of course, you have the duplication, you have high availability here and there, but it also increases kind of like costs. It makes it much more difficult to plan for things, sometimes even more expensive.
I'll give you an example, perfect example to the point you're trying to make. Imagine you have a server rack. You probably don't hold server rack in your own basement, as I was joking before. You rent server rack somewhere. We used to, but not anymore, luckily. You rent server rack somewhere. And the server rack comes with enough space, and then you decide I'm going to run my own LLM. And then wake up call. No, you can't, because your rack already exceeded the power allowance for all the machines. You cannot slap 4 NVIDIA GPUs inside without crossing the threshold. Now your bill and the time frame for delivery suddenly skyrockets. Something that is an unimaginable cloud. In the cloud, you go and GPUs have it enabled, and 10 seconds later, it's up there. So going off cloud, yes. Potential benefits, yes, it's a skill trap, but also it doesn't really solve any of the financial burden. It's still there, it's just in different level. And now you not only have to think about cost of development on cost of people, now you have to think about the bloody power connector to your rack and other minutiae of hosting your own infrastructure. So I think going off cloud for most businesses is going to be a trap.
Paulina?
I think depends also what skill set do you have within your team. But I think right now, majority got away from having also skill set for the hardware. I don't see many people being able to figure out, how to deal with servers, how to set up the server, how to set up your even a small data center. So yeah.
Do you
I
remember my
agree.
post from LinkedIn when I was actually calling one of the biggest vendors in Scandinavia, having questions about some graphical cards, some NVIDIAs for actually running LLMs. And the guy was actually telling me that, well, I cannot answer you. I never assembled the computer.
Yeah.
That's a true answer I got on the phone.
Yeah, right now majority of people, they take courses for the cloud and then they becoming cloud engineers or DevOps engineers or however you call it after 1 or 2 or 3 or 15 certifications. So yeah, they usually haven't put computer together.
So jump the cloud. But remember that this is actually limited just to those tiny special cases where it actually makes sense. And if and only if you have the budget, you have the people, and you have any idea about running that, because that's going to take a lot of dedication, yes?
Yeah. And if you find someone who preaches drop the cloud, save 7 million, think about this podcast. It depends. It might not apply to your use case. It might not apply to your team. It might not apply to your project. It might not even fit your business because of the way you conduct it. So it depends.
But we don't say that it never applies. It might apply in
Yeah.
some cases.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think the rules of it depends are multi-level, just like, Inception. I mean, I have seen cases where tiny details had an avalanche effect. So basically, it's simple. We still need the cloud. I mean, it is the go-to solution in way too many cases, basically in all the cases, because I can't, just like you say, you want to run you want to run AI today, you have to pull 3,000 euros for a machine. And that machine is going to have a 1,000 watts, 1 kilowatt power supply. You want to have 4 of these. This is becoming already a ridiculous amount of money. And 4 kilowatts of power. I mean, hello.
Also, something what we didn't mention regarding having cloud versus having server in your own basement or in your own data center, you have flexibility where you can host it. So you can have, 100 or 200 different data centers across the world. So you can have something in Asia, in South America, in North America, Europe, Africa.
Exactly.
You choose which you don't have this flexibility if you host your own data center in majority of the cases, unless you are a global company.
I couldn't agree more with you, Paulina. Just think about my small business that I started 4 years ago. Being able to make a distributed server between French and German servers with backup copy offloaded to some other third country with object store, with no hassle, without actually going anywhere and discussing terms of different data center providers was a huge win. I mean, that level of accessibility and automation, to which we probably get later, is insane. Like the fact that one person can automate international data resiliency platform, that's something we should never discount when it comes to cloud-based deployments.
So the message and the warning would be, don't think just about the money, because you might see a short-term win somewhere, but in the long term, this is going to burn you in a very bad way.
It depends.
Because there are so many ifs. Yeah, it depends, because there are so many ifs on the way, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so the topic
basically-
is complex. You don't have, you don't see in one line. You have multiple factors which can influence your cost here. People, availability, hardware, software, skill sets, where in the world you are, when in the world your customers are, where you want to have your availability across, and so on.
But you also named a very important thing, Paulina, before. That was that skills, the hardware skills. Yes, people, they no longer possess that. And this is becoming actually a true issue. I have seen, in my career, I have seen so many misconfigured machines where people actually leased full servers, yes, bare metal. They have, so many of them were misconfigured, underutilized the power that was actually lying there, yes. So, but we need the cloud. And now the question is, with cloud, you can build everything. You can do fun stuff like Jarek mentioned. I'm even afraid to ask what Paulina can do with cloud. But do you really need a Batmobile to run a simple website? What will be because probably you see also a lot of companies, especially startups, coming up with a product and throwing thousands of euros or dollars into infrastructure, building solutions that are scalable to the moon. What do you really need in the beginning? What would be your go-to strategy? Apart from it depends, of course.
I think you need something what works in the beginning. You need a POC which works and you can prove your concept before you starting to put the army for it. So usually, okay, make something what works ASAP, however it's set up. But very fast, if you wanna go further, I would suggest make an MVP and here start doing, for example, infrastructure as a code, even the basic one. Because when you maybe wanna have dev and production, if you wanna start be able to, put more customers into it than simple POC. But at the first stage, make something what can prove your business value before you're gonna start doing proper solution.
You named two things which I already like. Templates for infrastructure, because you can actually use Ansible, SaltStack, and so on. So many solutions that can actually help you provision, even in a masterless version, help you provision machines automatically. This is a huge time saver.
Yeah, also if
And
you
of
wanna
course, the idea about doing it gradually, because with the cloud, you can start even with a bigger machine if you want to test something crazy, epic. Yes, you can. I mean, I've been doing this many times. We've been provisioning a machine with like 96 CPUs, testing something weird. After a few hours, yes, you're going to pay $15, $20 for it, then just close it. That's it. But you were able to try out something which is normally unavailable.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you just want to, do the ClickUps, deploy something and test it and close it down. But as soon as you prove your point, in my opinion, you should start doing, templatized stuff because you want to deploy it multiple times usually, or you want to deploy it, destroy it. There might be different factors for it, but that starts saving you time on the longer run. If you do POC, you don't need it always.
Now I'm going to try to put this stick in the worst place. You all have your favorite clouds.
Mm-hmm.
But I hear a lot on LinkedIn where it's either highway or my way or the other way around, that you have to use a specific vendor, you have to use a specific cloud if you want to be successful, because if you don't use this particular technology, you're not going to be web scale. What would you recommend? What would you think? I mean, I'm saying like, if it works, it works. Of course, it depends. Check what kind of offering they have, if there's any security, backups, is it stable, and so on. But do you think it has any kind of influence? Does it really matter what cloud provider are you going to choose?
It
Yes.
might.
Give me your reasons.
Paulina?
One is legal. Right now, we are highly into legal stuff coming, especially with EU. So, for example, where you keep your data, that starts to matter more and more. So, some of the companies or industries you cannot get out of European cloud, or you cannot have data stored by non-European companies.
Jarek?
What's your favorite cloud provider and why?
Okay. I'm going to try to put the stick where it really hurts, because on LinkedIn, it's of course my way or highway or the other way around. Should you use a particular cloud provider in order to succeed? Is there any kind of magic? What do you really need? Or what you don't need? What would be, how do I choose? Does it really matter?
It depends from your requirements. Check your legal, check requirements from your industry.
So that will be the placement of data, yes?
For example, or what restrictions are coming within your region or within your industry, because it might be different. Not everything might be applying to you.
When I look at Jarek, I'm thinking also this idea, are you just in Europe or are you also actually on different continents? Yes, because then latency suddenly becomes an issue.
Read the fine print. Just because AWS has servers in Europe doesn't make them compliant in any sort of way. It's still
That's
US
another thing.
property. So
Yes.
read the fine print. Always check who owns the box at the end of the day. Who processes the data at the end of the day. So I'm 100% on board with Paulina on the legal side of things. Choose what's needed. If you're running a CRUD application for an online game, who cares? But if you're processing European data, check, and double check. Read the contract and the fine print.
And also EU is heavy on all the regulations. You have AI Act, Data Act, NIS2, CSA, DORA, DSA. So we're only getting more and more legal stuff coming for software. So number of the requirements is.
Yep.
But basically
Definitely.
no names have popped out. So basically it doesn't really
I can
matter.
give you a name. I can give you a name.
Do it.
It depends. No, on a more serious note, I think there's only one choice. You can either go hyperscaler or you can go boutique, because that's probably the only choice you have to make. If you already went through the side of compliance and you know where you want to host your data, then it's either hyperscaler or boutique. And my rationale behind this separation, which might not work for everyone, but my rationale is, if you have big bucks, go with hyperscaler, because then you can pressure them to give you support that you require. If you're a small fish, try getting AWS on a phone, help you with your issue without paying for support contract. Probably not going to happen.
I don't think it is possible.
And this was culturally insensitive, so let's cut it out. So if you don't have big bucks, go with hyperscaler, because you can make them support you. If you are smaller, go with boutique, because they will have better customer support. They will help you when you are in need. My business, my personal business, not the client business, often evolves around OVH. I find them to be a sweet spot between being big enough to support needs of the big ones, like they support French government, and also still have time for a little guy like myself. And then would I recommend OVH to everyone? No, because there are other cloud providers who have better offering for specific needs. So again, it depends.
I won't fully agree, because I work with both. I work with big American providers and I work with Scaleway and so on. And there were cases when boutique ones were not able to fulfill all the requirements of the organization when they were, if they are trying to come from the bigger cloud providers. So
Absolutely.
even if you might not have the full budget to being able to get into big one, but if the boutique one doesn't fulfill your requirements with what they can offer, you don't really have a choice.
Absolutely. This is a comment about more about when you are on a fence between one or another, and you already did all your due diligence with the feature legal and all of those things. If you have a choice, I'm only saying that you might get better support from the boutique one. And even this is hit and miss. Unfortunately, German businesses are horrible when it comes to customer support. So it probably doesn't matter whether it's small or big. Customer support will be lackluster if you go with German business. It depends. You probably have better understanding of your local market if you're looking for your local cloud provider. If we can even say this in the local terms.
I think
But
Denmark,
Michal.
The support in Denmark usually will be good, but the problem is the price tag is going to go through the roof. Because obviously,
you get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for, yes. But the problem is you need the support every now and then. You don't need it all the time. That's the thing, yes. So in the long run, suddenly I think this bill doesn't really pay out. So it's maybe better to get...
You need it when it's most necessary, and then you're going to pay as much as you need.
Yes, but
you can also enable it per environment. You don't need, for example, the same level of support to each of your environment. You can have, for example, higher support on production.
Of course.
You can also just make an assumption from the very beginning, something I do with my customers. How many hours in a row you can actually afford to lose? And of course, there are wrong times of the day, wrong times of the calendar, because I remember one afternoon I was landing in Malaga in Spain. And that evening costed quite a lot of money because the cloud provider had issues with their load balancers, yes? And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of euros in one afternoon.
Paulina mentioned legal. I mentioned support. Michal, how do you classify
I mentioned the case, if I'm supposed to add to your list, I mentioned the case about if you are a local or global, yes? Because if you want to be present on different continents, you're not going to lie it. I mean, going through the oceans, that's going to take some time. Latency becomes an issue, yes? We are suddenly talking about going to more than 100 milliseconds, yes? calculating correctly.
Close.
Close.
Yeah. I mean, that's the global scale, local scale. Yeah, definitely matters.
But
Depends
But
on
I
your
think also-
customers.
But I think also the whole point is, I remember one customer previously selected a system because she said that she wants to have someone, when I drop out or when we drop out, she wants to have someone to replace me. So obviously this is also an issue from the business continuity point of view, yes?
Yep.
But these days, I think it's kind of like, it's not an issue because the whole thing is so universal. Sometimes, the things either get more or less complex in different places.
Here, I would bring up our friend once again, because here where things can get heated. If you want, in my opinion, if you care about business continuity, if you want to have drop-in freelancers, contractors to help you out, be safe when one of your key people leave, go with Kubernetes on top of any cloud you want. Because you have standardized way of deployment, standardized way of scaling, standardized way of managing your infrastructure as a code.
Stop.
It might not
Wait. That's a good point. Paulina, wait. No, I think it's a good point. Paulina, you are pretty good at Terraform, yes? Exactly.
Yeah.
Kubernetes, Terraform, Salt Stack, these things, learning curve is pretty steep in all of those. But once you know them, it's so much.
Agree.
You don't agree?
I honestly cannot agree less with this statement.
So it's still uphill, even if you know them.
You cannot. No, it's like saying making a dough is difficult because you have to learn how to measure flour. Certain things have implied complexity. If you dismiss the act of learning, you cannot succeed in any technology. It's
but question. What is easier to find? Is it, can you find the Kubernetes specialist or the cloud specialist? And I think these days it's much easier to find cloud specialist.
It's easier to find AWS cloud specialist. It's easier to find GCP cloud specialist. It's easier to find some other Tencent, Alibaba cloud specialists. But those they are trained and sometimes, unfortunately, think within the scope of the cloud provider they have certificate from. Whereas I can drop my YAML on GCP, OVH, AWS, and it will still work no matter where it is.
Yeah, but if you know one cloud, the way of working and principles of working from one cloud to another very often translate. You just call it differently. It's not that different. Also, if you know Terraform, okay, we're going to have a different Terraform provider for if it's AWS, is it GCP, is it Azure, whatever. But
Terraform,
way of structure and so on, it's going to be similar.
But that's the same point. Like Terraform, Kubernetes, Ansible, SaltStack, they're all same tools in a way that they provide standardized way of describing the infrastructure one way or another.
It's a higher level of abstraction that allows you to move.
Exactly.
That's your insurance, actually. That's your insurance.
That's your insurance. That's your skill parachute that you deploy to replace anyone who knows those buzzwords to drop in and with some onboarding get productive. I think that's if you compare it with someone deploying to bare metal with repository full of bash scripts, I would just run away. I mean, that's my nightmare.
No, the nightmare is ClickOps. If you have ClickOps in production or years of ClickOps with people which are all the time rotating, and that's a huge data replace because you don't know who clicked what and in what.
We all have our PTSD, Paulina. Yours ClickOps, mine is bash scripts.
But I think the idea about the insurance being the abstraction level which is on top of those providers, that's a brilliant thing. But there is one more thing. And I remember once I actually made a video in a rum distillery on Madeira where I was actually trying to show how to prepare your software to scale it horizontally, yes? And that's the thing. That's something you have to remember also when you build your software. You don't have to build it ready for huge scaling, but leave some holes, some small preparations, some tricks that don't require actually a lot of time, but that leave you the idea that later on, when it's going to be needed, you can easily scale it. And actually, I recommend checking that video because I made a huge list of like 5 or 6, 7 points. What do you think that, because you don't have to develop it, you can prepare the app for further scaling. That doesn't take more than 15 minutes per point. Because you can store sessions different places. You can store tokens different places, yes? You can have some ideas about the database.
I think I have certain strong opinions here, and
Throw them.
It all comes down to the skill issues. You have to put some work to get to the end goal. And I'm not talking about going mental and getting certified in Kubernetes or Terraform or something else. I'm going to use Kubernetes because I'm familiar with, but obviously you can replace it with any other buzzword. But it is a insane hack for startups to not worry about infrastructure, especially at the beginning. I think Kubernetes becomes more work when you get big rather than when you're small. To give an example, when I started Wide Angle, it took me a week to deploy multi-layered microservice with scaling. Did I need scaling at the beginning? Absolutely not. But what I got as a benefit to it is I could deploy with a single file rather than crafting bash scripts, worrying about the placement of folders, deploying configuration, managing secrets. All those things are built in for free, and it took a few days to learn the basics to be productive. It's insane how useful this tool is for someone who bootstraps business on a budget, and every minute counts. So I'm really baffled when I hear, oh, Kubernetes is expensive or difficult or complex. I'm going to write my 100th bash script that copies files from here to there. Like, why? Why are you hurting yourself? Stop beating yourself in the face.
True. Look at Paulina's face now. So you are talking about actually picking the available automation and putting it into work.
Yes.
Yeah, but you don't want to hear from how many people I hear that Kubernetes is hard, that they don't understand it, they are scared of it. People who have years of the experience, they're scared of touching Kubernetes.
And it baffles me every time I hear this argument, because it's a bunch of YAML files and the documentation, which is arguably decent enough. But this is my opinion. I can appreciate that someone finds it difficult. Just like I love writing in Scala and find Haskell extremely complex. And I hear people who are in different camps saying Scala is extortionately complicated and they don't touch it. Pick the tool that works for your skills. Kubernetes is too complex? Go with Ansible. It couldn't be simpler. Maybe Terraform is your cup of tea. I don't know. I never touched Terraform, and maybe it's better. Maybe it's not.
Use the right tool for the job and don't be afraid to fail. As I sometimes say, it's an art to spectacularly fail so that becomes a success. Because quick failure is much better than a longer win, I think.
Shift left, fail fast, feedback loop.
But whatever you do, don't be like DHH. Don't write your new tool just because the other one was complex. Now you have two complex tools.
This is
If you want, you can do whatever you want.
You can do whatever you want.
If you have resources for it,
but
why not?
second of all, don't listen to someone telling you on internet to not to do or not to do something. Like you can accept.
Exactly.
You can ignore me if you want. Nobody's gonna listen.
No, but honestly, I mean, all the things that we are saying, they are valid. The problem is it depends on the context. So that's why it really makes a lot of. Usually, when I visit my customers in the beginning and also later on, I ask them thousands of questions, and I tell them simply, I have to learn your business. I have to understand it even more than you in order to actually pick the proper solution. And even at that point, I still sometimes make mistakes.
Yeah,
and that's when they, fail quickly.
That's how you learn.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, isn't experience the better name of failure?
Well, to be good at something, you need to fail enough times, yeah?
Failure has a stigma, right?
Yeah, but I don't think that... I think it has a stigma, but that's because, everybody now tries to run this success propaganda. And honestly, there is nothing better that shapes you and your will than a decent failure every now and then. Because that's pushing you forward.
I mean, the more you do, the more you're gonna fail. The more you're gonna learn.
Exactly. That's why politicians never fail. Politicians never fail because they don't do anything. That's kind of nice.
So with this nice idea, what is one thing everyone should take out of this episode?
Other
or
than
today's
it depends.
discussions?
I think if I were to when I was talking, I was looking at you, Paulina and Michal, and I see that first of all, there is a plethora of opinions. First of all, we here in three people, we have different ideas, right? I rage about Kubernetes. You probably have your own thoughts about it. And Michal is more MVP and throw it at the fence and see what sticks kind of person, I guess. Everyone has their own opinions. But those opinions come from the experience, from the things that we saw work in certain situation. So analysis is probably the key to the starting point. Where to start? Right? Where do we begin? Some level. We don't want to overanalyze and be paralyzed by it. But that would be my first takeaway, just by looking at your reactions when I was raging.
That is why good IT advice should be like a good pair of pants. It should fit and match properly. Because, look at us, 3 people, all running and helping plenty of customers. But we all have different ideas. We have different experiences, different strategies, different go-to methods. Would you go out in pink pants?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
I wouldn't, but I go, I go
Would you
with
have pink shirt?
pink. Yes, I go with pink shirts, but I think pink pants, that's too much for me. That's way out of my comfort zone, yes?
It's like Kubernetes. You can do it.
To top it off, what do you think, how people burn themselves mostly? Because now we have established that, cloud, of course, it's a candy shop. It has its own disadvantages, but there is no better way to start any kind of business than by going through cloud, unless you have some special legal requirements that force you into doing something else. But how people burn themselves, what do you think? What's the biggest pitfall? Just name one thing that you have seen that kind of like,
Changing strategy all the time. That's one.
And following unsolicited advice.
I think in my case, it's going to be chasing the latest and greatest.
That's kind
Which
of
kind of talks a little bit like Paulina says, changing the strategy, yes?
Or
Lack
following
of
advice from
self-control.
LinkedIn and social media.
Exactly.
Or
It
you
all
have
falls into
tiny
place.
objects on 10%, 20 on the kind of new stuff, and 70 is in the legacy, which is 20 years old, and turns out that's your core business. I mean, if you chase the shiny objects all the time, very often you have 10% of the newest stuff, 20% which is maybe a few years old, and 70% which is total legacy code, which is 20 years old. But very often that's where your core business is. So if that 70% is down, then you don't really operate, you don't provide business value to your customers. So be
I think
more.
chasing the latest and greatest can also contribute to fragmentation, which later on can become a technical conundrum.
So what would be your one advice when you meet with someone debating, go to cloud, go to bare metal, someone who is motivated by savings, for example? What would be your advice?
You're talking to a guy which is going to, in 99.99999% of times, going to say go with cloud. And then you have this little tiny fraction, because I'm at the moment also buying a computer for running LLMs locally. That's the moment where I'm buying it, because I'm buying it for one certain reason, legal. I want to process data which I cannot process in the cloud. But I would say go with cloud.
Paulina?
Usually go with cloud, but put your requirements down before you choose which cloud, which resources do you need, what skill set do you have, and then choose your strategy and plan your strategy.
My advice would be go with cloud, and for the love of God, AWS is not synonym with cloud. Shop around, find the one that suits your needs and meets your wallet.
I would even say try to stay away from, in the beginning, from Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, and try to see if there is anything else that fits your bill.
Yep.
And about going cloud, I'm talking this from my own experience. If you think that even when you run a farm with virtual machines and with the virtualization on top of them, you're still going to have someone that is going to go there in the middle of the night. And I'm telling it from my own experience. When I was living in Poland, I had to do this several times during the night. Go to the office, fix the computers.
Even if you're on a cloud, you sometimes usually need someone who's on the support.
Yeah. It doesn't go away.
No, just change what you're doing.
But some stuff you can do conveniently from your bed.
True. And with this nice message,
I've heard if you're looking for it depends online, you probably found out hundreds of other podcasts and channels and whatever. That's not the smartest name we have picked up, but it really kind of like shows the spirit of the whole idea. But it would be cool if someone helped us actually pick a name, which would be pretty ridiculous and something that is not really discoverable on the internet, so it becomes kind of like unique. But follow us, follow Paulina, follow Jarek, follow me, because until we establish the core channel of It Depends, or IT Depends, we're going to be dropping smaller shorts here and there. And if you have any questions, connect with us on LinkedIn and simply ask us.
And leave a comment.
And like it.
And
Or if you
also
disagree,
visit-
also leave a comment.
Yeah, exactly. Flame comments are
replies.
welcome. No.
I'm
Some
sure
of
you
us
disagree.
also have-
Just leave the comment. I know you disagree.
Some of us also have Instagram accounts, so there you can probably find also different type of content. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.